What is up, my beautiful gemstones? Welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, thanks for checking us out. My name is Gemma Jade, but today we are going to be discussing encounters with real mermaids. Mermaids are creatures that have managed to weave their way into the legends of a vast variety of different cultures. They can be read about in folklore from all over the world, and in some cultures they are actually known to be real creatures. What I mean by that is that the entire culture, for the most part, accepts that mermaids are beings in the sea, and there's no doubt that they actually exist. This is very much unlike most of America, where only some people believe that mermaids are real, and the vast majority of people here and in similar places believe that they're nothing but myths and fairy tale fodder. Obviously, I believe mermaids are real beings, though I don't claim to really know much about them, and I did briefly discuss them in my first book, Missing the Fae Theory, available on Amazon. There have actually been many reports from people who have encountered mermaids, and after going through them, I will even more readily admit that this is one of the strangest supernatural entities out there. The whole phenomenon is wild, guys. Today, I want to talk with you all about the people who most come into contact with mermaids, and that would be obviously divers. Obviously, they would be the ones who would run into all sorts of strange and normally unseen, oftentimes unknown, unbelievable types of beings, entities, and creatures underneath the sea. And I'm really excited that this is what we're discussing today. I did a video on mermaids before, but I was very careful to try and not overlap this one with that one, meaning I'm bringing you all new encounters and not ones I've covered before. So with that, let's jump right in. I found a site called Imaginarius, and there were many encounters with mermaids and other so-called mythical sea creatures and mythical beasts. In one of those accounts, a diver was out in the Caribbean, and she suddenly heard what she called, quote, a haunting melody, end quote, that somehow beckoned her deeper into the depths of the water. She couldn't help but follow the ethereal melody, and eventually she came face to face with not a mermaid, but a siren. For those of you who don't know the difference, there are many, but for the sake of this video, I will just say that sirens are known to be more malevolent and to carry more ill intent, specifically towards sailors whom they lure to their deaths. They also sometimes are described as looking very differently, with the upper body of a human woman and the lower body of some sort of bird. There's many differences, but those are the main ones I would say, at least in my opinion, just to kind of breeze through that. The report went on to say about this diver's encounter, quote, as the deep sea diver descended into the Caribbean's mythical depths, a haunting melody beckoned her deeper into the ocean's embrace, weaving a mesmerizing spell that captivated her every sense. The enigmatic allure of the underwater world enveloped her, and as she followed the ethereal songs, she encountered the mesmerizing beauty of the siren of the Caribbean. The siren's enchanting presence was a testament to the captivating legends that had echoed through generations. Her iridescent scales shimmered like precious gems in the dappled sunlight that filtered down from the surface, and her haunting voice resonated with an otherworldly grace. The diver found herself drawn to the siren, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and wonder. The siren's enigmatic allure held her in a trance, her movements fluid and graceful as she danced through the azure waters. The diver couldn't help but be captivated by the siren's hypnotic performance, feeling a deep connection to the ocean's mythical maiden. It was a moment of pure magic, where reality and fantasy intertwined in the most enchanting of ways, end quote. The report ends there, and I'm unsure as to why they would consider this a siren encounter. After all, it seems as though from the description that the woman saw a half-human, half-fish, which would be mermaid, and also it leaves us with a cliffhanger as to what happened next. Did this siren just let the woman go? Was it considered a siren simply because it carried a melody with it that was inescapable to the human ears that heard it? Was this really all there was to the encounter, maybe with the entity just swimming away and leaving the woman sitting there stunned? I guess that's how it almost has no end, right? Because if the woman was compelled by the melody to go so much deeper down, then how would she have ever turned away from it? I don't know. It just frustrates me when they do this and when things are left so open-ended with these encounters, but let's move on to the next one. Another report from the same site has an encounter with a diver who came face to face with an actual mermaid. The report read, quote, amidst the undulating currents of the Indian Ocean, the deep sea diver found herself immersed in a spellbinding encounter with an otherworldly creature of unparalleled beauty beauty and mystery. As she delved into the depths of the ocean, the water around her seemed to shimmer with an ethereal glow, casting an enchanting aura over the underwater landscape. Suddenly, a graceful figure emerged from the swirling marine mist, revealing the form of a mesmerizing mermaid, her iridescent scales reflecting the ambient light in a breathtaking display of underwater enchantment. The diver's heart raced as she beheld the mythical creature, her presence evoking a sense of wonder and awe. The mermaid siren song echoed through the ocean, captivating the diver with its haunting melody. Mesmerized by the encounter, the diver felt as though she'd stumbled upon a living legend, a being of myth and magic existing in the depths of the Indian Ocean. In that fleeting moment, amidst the hidden wonders of the deep, the diver's encounter with the mythical maiden became a cherished memory, forever etched in the annals of deep-sea exploration. End quote. I was a little surprised to see that the reports so far had to do with women having these sightings, but once I thought about it, it actually makes perfect sense because mermaids and sirens aren't known to really feel threatened by female human beings. It's the men who normally have the bad experiences with them. Not always, but definitely more often than not. Another encounter comes from the Great Barrier Reef in Australia, where an unnamed diver came across a whole group of mermaids. It said, quote, "In the vibrant depths of the Great Barrier Reef, a diver found themselves spellbound by a mesmerizing encounter with an otherworldly presence. As they ventured through the crystal clear waters, they stumbled upon an enchanting sight, a group of ethereal mermaids gracefully gliding amidst the coral gardens. The diver couldn't believe their luck and immediately reached for their underwater camera to capture this surreal moment. The mermaids, with their shimmering tails and flowing hair, seemed to exude an aura of mystery and beauty that was truly captivating. In that fleeting moment, the diver felt a profound connection with the marine environment and realized the importance of marine conservation. The encounter with these mythical maidens served as a reminder of the need to protect and preserve the fragile ecosystems of the Great Barrier Reef. As they swam alongside the mermaids, the diver was filled with an overwhelming sense of awe and respect for the underwater world. This encounter became a pivotal moment, igniting a passion within the diver to advocate for the conservation of marine life and its habitats." End quote. I mean, that's great and all, but where's the photos? I couldn't find them, and it's not that I don't believe this happened, because I definitely believe it's possible, but I also believe that if someone had photos of a so-called school of mermaids, then wouldn't they be there to accompany the encounter? Also, this sounds more like a Save the Great Barrier Reef public service announcement to me, but there it is. In 1988, a professional scuba diver named Robert Forster was diving near the coast of Florida when he suddenly noticed a strange disturbance in the water in his peripheral vision. He turned quickly, and as he did, he saw a figure dashing through the water, which was now very murky due to whatever it was he was looking at having stirred up the sediment at the bottom. Whatever it was appeared to be gracefully swimming in his direction, and once it got within 20 yards of him, he noticed it had what looked like arms or arm-like appendages, which seemed to him to have been tipped with talons, which were reaching out for him. As the figure got closer to him, he said the top half had smooth skin, breasts that were unmistakable, and a full head of long flowing hair. The bottom half covered in scales. Robert said that he did not feel a friendly vibe from whatever the thing was, and he said of its gaze, quote, "I've never seen such evil hate in the eyes of any human or animal before," end quote. He quickly turned and started swimming to the surface and made it to his ship without any further incident. That's the end of that one, but like I said, they're not about the male humans. But I've almost never seen a woman on her own have a negative or threatening experience with a mermaid or a siren. And I've gone through hundreds of encounters in my career. In August of 1991, a diver was out in the water near Cape Aya on the Crimean Peninsula in the Ukraine in the Black Sea. He was approximately 100 meters or 109 yards off the coast in calm seas when he suddenly felt something touching or like poking his shoulder. He turned to see what it was, but all he could see was the splashing of water all around him. He immediately thought that his friends were playing some sort of weird joke on him, and he thought nothing more of it as he continued swimming toward the shore. However, as he was swimming, he felt something very strong strike him on the shoulder, and this time, startled, he turned around and came face to face with a woman there in the water with him. He described her eyes as being much larger than normal and said she exuded some sort of bioluminescence, which was more creepy than anything else, according to the witness. Our witness was terrified, and he turned and swam as fast as he could and with all of his might towards the shore. The whole while, he said he could hear loud thrashing in the water. He forced himself not to look back because he said he was far too terrified of what he might see if he did. As he got near the shore, he thought he had gotten far enough away from whatever he just encountered, but before he could breathe a sigh of relief, he was struck again on the shoulder with the same great force as before. Once again, it was the mysterious woman, her eyes fully black, extremely large, and expressing what he said was, quote, disappointment, end quote. He ran onto the shore screaming for help at the top of his lungs, and when he finally looked back, he saw a silvery body splashing on the surface before disappearing back down into the depths of the sea. The terrifying experience was over, but our witness became obsessed with what he just encountered, and he would dream about the mysterious creature many times over from that point. He went back to the same spot numerous times as well in the hopes of coming face to face with her again, but unfortunately for him, or maybe fortunately, maybe fortune was at play for him instead, he never saw her or anything like her ever again. I was wondering here if her expression of disappointment was for the fact that her striking him wasn't getting him to slow down or hurting him in some way, so she could carry him off and like drown him or something, or if maybe it was just her expressing her overall disappointment with the human race, the fact that he was out there in the first place, or something completely different that maybe I'm just not thinking about right now. I don't think she had good intentions, and like I've reiterated before, they usually don't when it comes to men. Once again, I'm left dissatisfied with the encounter because it doesn't explain anything and ends way too abruptly. But then again, I'm also glad in a way because I don't think anyone would make up such a strange and somewhat benign encounter. So at least that part lends to the authenticity of it, in my opinion. An unnamed diver was out in the water of the Maldives, which if you know anything about that water, it is absolutely beautiful and crystal sparkling clear. This man reported that seemingly out of nowhere, 3 mermaids appeared and began to circle him. He said they had their upper bodies of humans and dolphin-like tails on their bottom halves. He explained further that the upper bodies of the mermaids were somewhat androgynous with no hair on their heads and faces that were, quote, feral looking, end quote. If you read my first book, Missing the Fae Theory, my chapter on mermaids, this is how they're most often described, and how even through vision, my idea of them, where that's come from through vision and encounter after encounter and just kind of the knowing that I have, that is how I believe most of the time they actually look. Very feral looking, no hair, sharp teeth. So like I said, this is exactly how I described them in my first book, though I had never seen one and hadn't come across this encounter or any others really like it at that time. I just had done so much research into the old legends and original folklore of these creatures, and it seemed to me that they would not be terribly beautiful and wouldn't necessarily have what we think of as human-looking bodies or attributes. I absolutely believe this man's encounter. He went on to say that their eyes were all black and that their teeth looked incredibly sharp and were pointed, almost like a shark's teeth, but smaller and more human looking, if that makes any sense. They circled him for a couple of minutes, seemingly just checking him out, studying him, and then they darted off fast as lightning and out of sight. In April of 1999, a report came out from master diver Jeff Liker, aged 43, from what he experienced while diving on the island of Kauai in Hawaii. At the time, he was diving with a group of 6 other people, and they were all exploring the bottom of the ocean about 20 miles off the coast of Kona Coast. At some point, he looked up and saw what looked like a woman about 10 feet away from him just swimming with a pod of dolphins. This was somewhat odd, as she didn't seem to be wearing any equipment or anything, but what Jeff said struck him as most strange about the situation was that the woman was easily keeping pace with the dolphins, and if you know, you know, dolphins move effortlessly fast through the water. Jeff explained this himself, and he said, quote, I'd heard about her before. Most of us who are out in these waters regularly have heard her stories, but I'd never seen her until that morning. We were on our way out to the point when a school of dolphins started following the boat, playing in our wake. Suddenly, one of the men on the port side starts yelling and pointing. I couldn't believe what I saw. There, not 10 feet from the bow, was what looked like a nude woman. She had long flowing hair and one of the most beautiful faces I've ever seen. But there's no way a human being could be swimming so fast. She was keeping right up with those dolphins. Then she leapt into the air and my heart almost gave out on me. Her entire lower half was covered with scales and tapered back into a huge fish tail. She jumped once more, then disappeared under the surface. About an hour later, we arrived at the point and we were diving. I was photographing some colorful fish with my underwater camera. Suddenly, I felt something brush against my right leg. She shot by me like a streak of lightning, then turned and came back past me, swimming the other way. I just aimed the camera and started snapping pictures. I kept shooting as she broke for the surface and swam away, end quote. Now, these photos that Jeff Likert took do exist. They're on the internet, and despite Jeff being adamant that they'd all been extensively studied and absolutely authenticated, they look like they could have very easily been digitally created in a hoax. I'm not saying one way or the other. I tend to err on the side of caution when it comes to calling other people's experiences fake. So I believe in his story, but you'd have to see the photos for yourself. I believe Jeff's encounter story and think there's all different types and species of mermaids and sirens, which is why everyone who sees them reports them as looking either just a little bit or vastly different from the last person or from what we all imagine in our minds, mainly thanks to the Little Mermaid Disney movie, which I love, by the way, but still, you can look the photos up and decide for yourself. It would be under Jeff Leichert Mermaid Photos in Google. Last name spelled Leichert. Let's move on. More recently, in 2012, work was being carried out at the Gokwe Dam in Midlands, which is in Zimbabwe, from what I understand. And the work was suddenly suspended because the workers refused to do their jobs, all of them claiming that they'd been terrorized by mermaids who were lurking around that area. These mermaids were described as looking like pale-skinned humans with black hair and fish's tails. The workers had originally been there in order to repair some things and to install water pumps, but they became very frightened when people in the area started disappearing and others started reporting being attacked or chased by these mer beings. They weren't just females either. This got so bad with the workers refusing to do their jobs or even to go near the place, and with the project being held up for so long, that the Zimbabwe Water Resources Minister named Sam Sipepa Nkomo had to appear before a parliamentary committee to explain the situation and what was going on with all of it. He announced to the committee that white workers had to be brought into the area to replace the locals because they hadn't been so familiar with the local lore of the mer people in the area, which, by the way, is something I was just about to mention. Zimbabwe is a special place for so many different reasons. But I will tell you, when I did my research for my first book, there were many tales and real reports of encounters with all different types of legendary beings, creatures, entities. Goblins and mer people especially and specifically. However, even the white workers said they had been seeing the exact same thing the local workers had been reporting, and eventually they too refused to go back to work on that particular project. They didn't want to go to that area. Rural and Urban Development Minister Ignatius Chombo also made arrangements to have some tribal chiefs in the area perform rites and rituals that were allegedly supposed to appease the creatures, but it's thought that this was done to merely ease the minds of the workers so that they could go back to their jobs and finish the very important project for the community. I mean, this was about their water. According to the tribal leaders who were consulted about this at the time, many lakes and regions in the area are inhabited by mermaids, although it's said they're typically drawn to larger dams than the one we're discussing here. The huge dam at Lake Kariba is one such example of a much plagued area that's a hotbed of activity for these specific creatures. When asked if they really believe these creatures existed at all, the leaders were adamant that they absolutely do exist, and they were unanimous in that assertion. When asked if the mermaids in the lakes and other places in the area were real, one Chief Edison Chihota of Mashonaland East said, quote, "As a custodian of the traditional lore, I have no doubt. For anyone to dispute this is also disputing him or herself," end quote. I think this means he's saying that they're basically as real as humans are. As far as Nkomo, he was more concerned with the fact that the workers absolutely refused to go back, and he'd been going through it with all of the rituals just to try and appease them so that the project could finally be completed, and they still weren't going back. He was extremely skeptical that the workers' problems were being caused by literal mermaids, and he blamed it on a mix of superstitions, optical illusions, and dangerous water currents. I mean, in my opinion, that's a real reach. Although something that went unsaid here, or at least was only said in so many words, is that this guy more than likely thought that the workers were afraid for their lives, but those fears were based not on mermaids or other mythical creatures, but on the fact that they could die due to the currents and other dangers in the area, but they didn't want to see that. This is basically what his accusation was. They just didn't want to admit of what they were really afraid of, so they were like, ooh, mermaid sounds good. You're using mermaids as an excuse because you want to be more credible? this guy's an idiot, in my opinion, allegedly. He said about it, quote, "In Matare, what I think is that there must be a sanction underneath there which creates a hole in the water, and the water will actually be swirling violently that if you fell in, you would not come back out, even if you had an oxygen mask on," end quote. So yeah, it seems like he thought they didn't want to risk their lives for the project and thought that the leaders, or whoever was paying them, would be more critical of them just being honest than if they claimed to have been at the mercy of mer people. But I'm not so sure I agree. Also, another thing that struck me as odd is that I looked more into the alleged disappearances in the area at the time, which everyone was blaming on the mer people, and those disappearances did actually happen, many of them in fact, and yet no one was even talking about this at this point, or so it seems. We have reports from all of these leaders and people in charge, and not one single mention of one single missing person. That's wild to me, but it is what it is, I guess. Let's move on now to Reddit, where user 1amphibian5831 said he had his encounter while diving with his family off of the Phi Phi Islands in Thailand. He said, quote, "To paint the picture a bit better, at this moment, me and my brother were snorkeling in the water right by a floating island, while the others in our group were a bit further away from the island. This island was like a chunk of land that extended downward into the water rather than having a gradual slope. Suddenly, our dad called out for us. Someone in our group saw a small shark, and everyone was gathering around to see it. My brother swam out there, but for some reason, I stayed put and kept watching the different fish that were swimming so closely to me. Then something caught my attention. There seemed to be smaller caves underwater by the shore, and I saw something slowly coming out of one of them. It was similar to a human head facing down towards the bottom of the ocean. I completely froze up and kept staring. This person kind of floated out of the cave, never faced up towards the surface, and did it really slowly. Nothing of this person that I could see was moving. By this point, I could see the back of the head and most of the back. The person had really, they're writing it that way, I'm not saying it, sparse black hair slicked down to the scalp. Their skin looked gray and the spine was extremely pronounced. I was so sure that I was looking at a corpse and I completely froze up. I couldn't breathe, I couldn't move. The time felt like it was standing still. The person kept floating out of the cave, and that's when I started seeing its tail. The tail was dark gray and looked like a stereotypical mermaid tail, only gray. I blinked multiple times, convinced I was hallucinating, but I kept seeing it. I've never believed in the supernatural, but this thing was only a few meters below me, and I could see it so very clearly. I felt a sense of danger. I knew that I wasn't supposed to be seeing this, and I was terrified that it would see me, seeing it, and attack me. But the thing never once faced up. Once it was out, it swayed to the side and kept a close distance to the island and disappeared into another cave. After a few seconds, I snapped out of it and quickly swam to my dad and my brother. I burst into tears and frantically told them that we had to get back on the boat right away. My dad asked me what happened and I told him what I saw. Obviously, he didn't believe me and got furious at me for lying. When we got back to the boat, I told him again and stood by the fact that I was not lying. My father told me that he really hoped I was, that it was either a lie or that I was insane and had to be locked up in a mental hospital. I knew how crazy all of it sounded, and honestly, I didn't really even believe myself after a while. I decided to tell him that I made it all up. Since that day, I've tried to convince myself that I did make it all up, but I've never experienced any hallucinations, and I know what I saw. I've told others, but of course, most of them thought it was made up. It's so insanely frustrating feeling like you're being gaslighted by the entire world, and I truly hope that someone out there believes me, end quote. I have no idea why, but this encounter made me wonder if maybe he'd accidentally and momentarily swam through some sort of portal or into some sort of alternate reality. He knew he wasn't supposed to be seeing what he was, and that's one of the main things people reported feeling when they end up inadvertently passing through portals, but maybe it was just a deceased mermaid. But then again, he said it moved into the other tunnel. I honestly don't know, but that encounter in particular made me very uncomfortable and creeped me out more than the other ones so far. I just can't quite put my finger on why. Our last encounter also comes from Reddit, and the witness's name is Mencho14. He said he was on a very dangerous dive off of North Sentinel Island, which is a part of the Andaman Islands, an Indian archipelago in the Bay of Bengal. North Sentinel Island is most known, even famous for, its uncontested tribe of vicious natives. It seems, however, that now it's also known for being the home of mermaids as well. Our witness said, quote, "So one day I embarked on a scuba diving adventure off of the coast of the North Sentinel Island. It's an unspoiled island renowned for their vibrant marine life and untouched coral reefs. As an experienced diver, I was eager to explore the underwater wonders this remote location had to offer. I descended into the crystal clear waters, accompanied by the soft sound of my own breathing apparatus. The sunlight pierced the water, creating a dance of light and shadow on the ocean floor. Schools of colorful fish swam by, undisturbed, really, by my presence. As I ventured deeper, navigating through the intricate coral formation, something unusual caught my eye. Hidden in the shadows of a large, overhanging rock formation was a figure unlike any sea creature I'd ever encountered before. At first, I thought it might be a large fish or a sea lion, but as I approached cautiously, the figure became clearer. There, in a small cavern, was what appeared to be a mermaid. She had the upper body of a human with long flowing hair that shimmered in the filtered sunlight, and the lower body of a fish, complete with a graceful iridescent tail. Her skin had a subtle pearly sheen, and her eyes were a deep, mesmerizing blue, reflecting the ocean itself. I was stunned, my heart racing with a mix of fear and wonder. The mermaid seemed equally surprised to see me. For a moment, we just stared at each other, frozen in time. Then, with a fluid and elegant motion, she swam closer. Her movements were smooth and effortless, a dance of grace and beauty. She circled around me, her eyes filled with curiosity. Then she reached out, gently touching my diving suit with her delicate fingers. Her touch was light and cool, sending a shiver through my body. I reached out too, but as my fingers were about to touch her, she swiftly turned and disappeared into the depths, leaving behind nothing but a trail of luminescent bubbles. I surfaced, my mind racing with what I had just experienced. The encounter was brief, but it was profound and life-changing. The mermaid's existence, a being of such extraordinary beauty and grace, challenged everything I knew about the ocean's mysteries." End quote. Yeah, so this was a benign one. You never know what to expect, guys, when you're encountering the supernatural, right? Because I feel like any sentient being, any being, entity, whatever, that has any kind of intelligence is going to behave differently from one to another, just like humans do. So why wouldn't it be the same with mermaids or mer people, really? Because I don't think it's just women. I think perhaps women might do more. I don't know how to explain this. This is going to sound weird to some of y'all, but most of y'all, my gemstones will get me here. So you know how like with humans in the olden days, like the man would go out to work and the woman would stay home? Maybe with mermaids, the women are the ones that have to go out and get the food. Because I would say if I read 100 mermaid encounters, 98 of them were with females. But that leaves the other 2%, right, that are male. And I've even seen encounters where some you can't tell which is which except by the chest, which like that's androgynous. So why is it always the females? Or are they sent out to lure the human and maybe some of them just don't feel right about it? Guys, I don't know. As always with everything pretty much we discuss here on this channel, it's so massive. It's hard to even come to terms with or wrap my mind around. So what do you guys make of all of this? What should we as the human race make of these reports and encounters? They're so incredibly different and varied that it's hard to really be sure of anything surrounding this mystery. That's one thing I know. After all, out of all the legendary and mysterious beasts and creatures that have allegedly been spotted all throughout the world, some people think that mermaids range more into the unlikely part of the spectrum of believability, but I don't agree with that. I've been seeing so many different sorts of creatures and entities, beings and spirits from so many different worlds, realms, and places my whole life. So it's impossible for me to dismiss something like mermaids because the legends have been around almost forever and too many people throughout the ages have reported seeing them, all independent of one another. Despite the reports always being so varied, the fact remains the same that all of these people could not be lying, all completely independent of one another and also saying very different but also in some ways very similar things. It just can't be that they don't exist or that they never existed at all. Too much coincidence for me, and y'all know I don't believe in coincidence. I believe the reason there aren't many, if there are any at all, fossil records or dead mermaids washing up on the shores all over the beaches of the world is possibly because they more than likely only visit here from other dimensions. And I believe one of the main ways they do this is through whirlpool activity. Kind of like why I believe we never caught Bigfoot, find deceased Bigfoot. Because they're going in and out of portals. So when if they become deceased here, if they die here or are unalived here, thanks YouTube, the other Bigfoots come and just bring them back to their own realm. Does that make sense? There are other ways too, I'm sure. It's like Bigfoot, like I said, most of us know for sure that it at least exists, even though there's never been any real tangible evidence. It's more than likely because they bury their own dead or come from alternate realities and dimensions, and they have special abilities that some would call magical. Please let me know what you all think in the comments below. Please, as always, I'm really looking forward to hearing your thoughts about this one. That's all I have for you today, guys. Please give this video a big thumbs up if you enjoyed the content. If you enjoyed hanging out with me and one another in the premiere, if you watched in the premiere, spread the love by sharing this video. Subscribe if you haven't already. Please hype this video as much as you possibly can. I really do appreciate it. Check out the description box for important links. All 14 of my books, links to the Kindle, paperback, and Audible version should be in the description box. But if you want to just browse my collection and see what I really have to offer by way of my collection of books, just go to Amazon and type in Gemma Jade Books. If you'd like an autographed copy of any of my books, email me before you make the purchase. Also, for personal intuitive oracle readings, birth chart readings, for more information about products I sell, services I offer, for any and all correspondence, you have to email me. No PMs, DMs, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram messages, none of that. Just email me, GemmaJadeParanormal@gmail.com, and be patient, please, in waiting for a response. I really only get to them like once a week. I'm not growing the way that I expected to here on YouTube. I'm trying to work as best I can in relation to how well I'm doing. So I'm trying to also get feedback. So yeah, things are changing in a major way behind the scenes, and you all will see it probably around the new year. Please donate to the channel if you can. Every donation helps. Every little bit counts. My PayPal, Cash App, Amazon wish list gift link are in the description box. That's basically how I'm getting paid right now because of all the changes I've recently made to my YouTube channel. I just feel like I wasn't growing fast enough, you know, all the years I've been here versus the subscriber count, especially when compared to TikTok. So guys, I really need you to back me up, support me in any way you possibly can, financially and otherwise. Hype the video, share it out, make sure you like it, make sure you're subscribed, your notification bell is on, do all of the things. You guys know what to do. Come on. Along with that, be kind to each other, guys. It doesn't cost anything. Be kind to yourselves and never accept anything less than others being kind to you. If nobody told you today you're amazing, you got this. I believe in you. I got your back. Always go in grace. Smile at a stranger. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye.